Hello, welcome to the Dollhouse. I am the doll, and today I am going to be talking about where I learned colorism from. I actually learned it from my mom, my parents, my grandmother. My grandmother was especially racist. I'm not even going to say colorist. I'm going to say racist. She didn't like black people. She didn't like white people. Don't be anything in the middle either, because she was mistrustful of everyone. She was born in 1919. I would really call it slavery, because they were sharecroppers. She was born into sharecropping in the year 1919, and she told me that they had to escape the plantation. So to me, it sounds like they were enslaved people. My grandmother. This is a woman who lived down the street from me when I was growing up, and it was such a luxury to have her, because she lived through the Great Depression. She lived through World War II, Vietnam War, the Korean War, Kennedy assassination, Martin Luther King assassination. She was living in segregation. She watched all the civil rights movement unfold. She benefited from light skin privilege and texturism, I'm sure, because she was almost 40% admixture. I believe it was, English, Irish, slave master. And we did her 23andMe before she passed, which it was so interesting to see. But mostly, it was Nigerian and English, Irish. English/Irish is what they noted. So she had a lot of trauma stemming from race, and she had my mother. She had my mother with a dark-skinned man, my grandfather. And all of her children were by dark-skinned men. My grandmother, she had 7 children with her husband. And then she had my mother after she left her husband. She had 2 more kids after she left her husband, my mother and my aunt. So she had 9 kids in total. I have a slew of family. Like, I have a big ghetto family on both sides, on my mother's side and my father's side. So I feel very supported by my family. But my grandmother, she did sow division in our family by giving preference to the lighter skinned kids, even though we were still also black and ugly, because she would say that often. She really did some damage to the darker skinned kids, her grandkids, and her children. She called my mother ugly when she was growing up. She called my cousins ugly to my face. And she told one cousin, "You're going to have a hard road to hoe." Basically, you're going to have a hard life. Like, she was making the analogy that she's going to be on a plantation trying to hoe one of the rows of vegetables, and it's going to be hard because she was dark. My grandmother, she would always come to the birth of a new child, excited to see the baby, but always checking behind its ears and like the elbows to see if the actual color that the baby would turn would be darker. She said, "Oh, she's going to be a darkie," when my sister was born. Anyhow, she's going to be a darkie. I remember that. Just little things this is a child that was just born. The ears probably have gone through some trauma because it just passed through a birth canal. So I don't know, but I do know that I love my grandmother. Like, I know her colorist ways, and I would hear my cousins out about the things that she would say about their skin tone, and hear the pain and see the pain that caused. My mother too. My mother internalized it. And I was born, my mom was a single mom until she met my stepfather. But before she met my stepfather, she had me and my two of my brothers. So, my dad was light skinned, and he wasn't married to my mother. So they were in a fake relationship, and he was constantly cheating, or what she perceived to be cheating on her. And I remember once he was cheating with a very light skin, like of butter pecan goddess type light skin tone. Yeah, maybe like Mariah Carey's color. She looked a lot like kind of that phenotype. And we're from a very small town, but she discovered that my dad was cheating with this very light skinned woman. And it really, really hit her so hard, to the point where I remember she kind of started stalking the lady. I'm like really telling on my mama, y'all. I'm sorry. I love my mama. Not too much on my mama in the comment section. Okay, yes, she was the queen of the pick me land, but I've watched a lot from her. And hell, I used to be the prime minister, so I did learn from her. As they say, the apple does not fall far from the tree. So I'm probably going to tell some stories about how I have manifested a better life after leaving Pick Me Land and renouncing my position as prime minister. But we'll talk about that later. So my mother, she met my light-skinned father. They had me, but he was cheating with the light-skinned woman, this woman that we had to just hate because she was light-skinned and evil. And I didn't think that she was evil. I didn't know this lady, but I just remember sympathizing with my mother and feeling her pain. My mother, she loved my hair growing up. She obsessed over it because it's like a 3C texture. I'm still kind of like working with that, but learning, exactly. But it's loosely curled. Like, I'll put a picture up of an example of what it looks like. It looks like this, but long. It was really long when I was a child, and so if she pressed it out, it was waist length. So I remember her getting me ready for Easter and her taking the time and care to get me just right. But mostly it was my hair would be up in ponytail. She would just sit me down between her legs and have a little cup of water and some bergamot or some kind of hair grease and comb my hair into pigtails. One big long one in the front and maybe 2 or 3 or 4 others. And I did enjoy the praise that I got from my mother and others that I had such pretty hair. I know that it was a source of pride for her, and I know it hurt her feelings when my aunt gave me a perm without asking my mom. And my aunt was an unambiguous dark-skinned woman who had a salon, like a home salon. I used to live in that salon, and that's where I learned how to do hair, watching her. But she believed that if you had a drop of melanin in your body, you needed a perm. That's what she believed. She had everybody on that creamy crack. My brothers all had, my cousins, every man in the family basically had a jerry curl, because they went to her to, she she was very demanding. And to all my brothers and cousins who were under 18 and had no say in their hair had jerry curls. And if you were a girl, you had a curl or a weave. She put a weave in her granddaughter's hair, who was like 1. And I love my family, so not too much on my family. But she gave me a perm without my mom knowing, and it devastated my mom because she liked to have that hands-on activity with my hair. And of course, that's a big deal. Like, she was mad as fire. Like, you put a perm in my child's virgin hair, and I was in the 3rd grade. I went to school that next week swinging. Like, my hair was long to my waist. I was just the star of the show that day for sure. So, but my mom she was in tears. She knew what perms, especially back then without the proper care, did to hair. For the most part, it was a, break off. It was inevitable that the hair would start to break and stuff. And it did, but it always grew back really fast. Like, it's just hair. I've had long hair and cut it and then had long hair again later. So, my mother took a lot of pride in my hair because she just couldn't seem to grow her hair. My mother's hair is probably like a 4A. It's 4A, maybe 4B, and it can grow, but she never did believe it, I don't think, or take the time to learn her hair. She was one of the first people in my small town in the 90s with a waist-length weave and contacts. And in the 90s, in the early 90s, that was a big deal. So my mom was giving Cardi B vibes, I guess. She had that whole essence for the most part. I love my mama, y'all. Don't talk about my mama. So anyway, so I definitely have a soft spot for women who feel that inferiority, because I see where it comes from. I know the story. I've lived it. I have relatives, cousins, blue eyes, blonde hair on my mother's side, who my grandmother would still be racist to, by the way. Even though she was colorist, she would still, she acting like she white, talking about my younger cousin. She's got blonde hair, blue eyes, beautiful. She looks like Lotto. I saw a picture of Lotto on Instagram, and I thought it was my cousin. So, but under my grandma's thumb, who just didn't have a lot of joy in her life, she wanted to spread the misery around. She even hated the light-skinned, super light, white-looking child, too. So, colorism is a story of, yes, pain. But there are so many other sources of pain. Like, why pick that one to be overwhelmed with? It's another thing that should roll off like water off a duck's back. So, I hope that this video, caused a bit of reflection. I know it definitely sent me down memory lane. I have many other stories about where I learned colorism from in my family. Like, this video could be so long. So yeah, I've learned a lot of colorism from parents and grandparents, aunties, members of the church. I went to a predominantly Black church. Anyhow, I am happy that I could share this with you. I wonder if you have any stories about your mothers or family members. I would love to know. You can always email me your stories. exoticaldollhouse@gmail.com. Life goes on beyond and past colorism, but it's interesting to look at what the repercussions are. So again, let me know your thoughts and questions in the comment section, and we'll be talking soon.